vicious. And the newas are so hard and vicious that in order for you to not get another penalty, you got to keep the pace. And if you can't keep the pace, you're going to fall behind in tempo. Again, another step. You're going to get another penalty, and you're going to get Hansu Kamaki out of the match. Or you're going to have to keep the pace at which you've never fought before or do not train at. And then I'm going to still beat you because you can't maintain that. Now, when you look at attack rate research, some of the best research that I've seen in the public domain on attack rates can be found at judometrics.com. It's a guy by the name of Lance Wicks who is absolutely phenomenal when it comes to judo research. You can follow him at Twitter at Lance W. I don't have any business relationship with Lance or anything like that. I never met Lance. I think I've communicated with him maybe at a maximum 3 times by email or that's about it. But I mean, he is phenomenal when it comes to judo information. Some of the stuff that I talk about, he knows, but he presents it a little bit differently than what I do. He's a phenomenal individual when it comes to judo. Now, here's what you have to understand: if you're getting ready to fight someone whose attack rates are much higher than yours, then you got to find a way to either match that, or your gripping has to be such that you can stifle that. But you need to know what it is. And you need to know if you look at the attack rates for the international competitors in your weight class, that will allow you to structure your practices and know what your strength and conditioning practices should look like. Because if you can't keep up that particular pace, or your practices aren't such that they will allow you to fight at that particular pace, you're wasting your time. Now, nothing is written in stone. Just because I say it doesn't mean that's the way it is. Judo changes per weight class, per weight division, per competition level, and it changes per location based on style. There's certain styles that people enjoy in Japan. There's certain styles that people enjoy in Europe. There's certain styles that people enjoy in the Caribbean. Judo has certain styles. Now, with this whole rule change of no leg grabs, what it does provide is it provides more of a universal style when it comes to judo. More of a universal style. There's still certain styles, okay, when it comes to judo. But judo does change. It changes per competition sometimes. It changes based upon the person refereeing. So all I can say is stay current and keep studying. Understand the anatomy of judo match. Understand what judo matches look like. Ask yourself these self-reflective questions. Here's what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that you must fight like this or fight like that. I'm saying that you must be aware of the anatomy of a bout. And here's why. Because the anatomy of a judo match, and I'll say it again, has the greatest effect on your preparation. Once you know the anatomy, you know exactly how you want to prepare. Medical approaches, surgical techniques, and medicinal protocols will change as science advances. The population presents different challenges, and as diseases become more resistant. But that does not affect the fact that all future physicians will study anatomy forever. You must know the anatomy of a judo match, constantly study the anatomy of a judo match. The anatomy of the judo match will change. As the rules change, the anatomy will change. You have to go back and look at it a little bit differently. But that does not mean that you don't study the anatomy. You always study the anatomy. And I'm not saying this is the only way to win. I'm saying that you need to peruse all the ways available and then govern yourself accordingly. There are a lot of ways to win. But all these ways to win are going to be based upon what the anatomy of the judo match looks like. Critical question break number 2. Find 3 to 5 matches on your favorite judo player. All right, this might be somebody you compete against. and write a 2 to 3 page summary on their match strategy as you perceive it. Now, here's why I'm telling you to do this, because this is deliberate practice in terms of scouting and preparation. The more you do this, the better you will get at it, and after a while, you won't have to do it at all as what Malcolm Gladwell calls blink, as your blink increases. You'll be able to sit down and look at a match, go through the strategy in your head of what the other person is trying to implement. You'll see it right away based upon your knowledge on anatomy of a judo match and in your knowledge of strategy, and you've done enough scouting reports. You'll be able to see it right away. But you need to do it. And do not speak about the match. Summarize the player's MO, the modus operandi, the way that they're operating. Second thing, homework question number 2. Look at 2 of your matches and do the same thing that you did in assignment 2A. Alright? Look at 2 of your matches and do the same thing. Now ask yourself, how did you compare to your favorite judo player? Let me give you a hint. If you're an 81 kilo player, find 3 to 5 matches on an 81 kilo player that's a top-notch player, top junior, top senior player, and summarize their match strategy. And then do the same thing for yourself. And then ask yourself how you compared, because you might find that your attack rates are different. You may find out that your gripping is not as good. You may find out that they're staying on one side. They're always fighting lefty. You're always fighting righty, and you're switching from left to right and back and forth. And if that's the case, there's a problem there. I'm not going to get too deep into the whole gripping game, but you need to analyze what's going on and then govern yourself accordingly. Third question, or 2C. Are there any adjustments that you think that you need to or should make based upon your newly acquired knowledge and understanding? Now, after you do this summary and after you watch this particular video, ask yourself, are there any adjustments that you need to make? And if so, write those things down and then start to implement those based upon the amount of importance and the amount of growth that each of is going to create. Some things you're going to change that are going to increase your game exponentially, and some just incrementally. Find out what those things are and make the change. Here's what I'm saying. I want you to have or create an intellectual awareness. Understand tempo, understand pace, understand attack rates, and how they fit within a 5-minute bout. Understand the rules and know their effects on you, your opponent, and the match. Think about how this is going to guide your preparation. I've never been nervous to the point of partial paralysis for a test. Not for a test which I truly prepared for. So if you're one of those people who are nervous before a bout, you'll find yourself being less nervous as you are more prepared. Do not underestimate the importance of scouting, studying, reading, and analyzing. The cognitive domain must be trained like the psychomotor domain. I prided myself on being quote-unquote smarter than the person I was fighting, due to the fact that I just believed that I was more prepared and I did more studying. Please do not undervalue scouting. I repeated this point on purpose. Do not undervalue scouting. And do not reduce scouting to just your opponents. You need to scout yourself. Now, we went over the pre-Hajime part. We went over the match. We didn't really go into the Hajime part as much as possible and the strategy, but we went over the match. Now we have to go over the Soramati part. Now here's the cycle for this particular discussion. Cycle is pre-Hajime, Hajime, Soramate, pre-Hajime, Hajime, Soramate, pre-Hajime, Hajime, Soramate. You have your pre-Hajime, you have your match, and you have your Soramate. That's the cycle for this discussion. Now, that's not the true cycle, but that's the cycle for this discussion. We'll have a brief talk about this, but we're not going to dive into it now, but it's something to think about. As I said before, the Hajime portion of the diagram is a course by itself. It consists of a series of Hajimes and a series of Mates and short pre-Hajimes within it. Meaning, here's what a match looks like. Here's what the Hajime zone that we're not really going to discuss really talks about, really addresses. There's a Hajime and there's a Mate. And then after the Mate, there's a small pre-Hajime and then another mate. Now this small pre-hajime on the mat, that has to be trained. And you can ask my man Taraji Williams Murray that we trained that. You can